What is going on, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another episode of the Kingdom Says. I am your host, as always, Garrett Williams. Tonight, I am joined by two lovely gentlemen joining me on the screen once again, as always. We've got Mr. Thomas Pike, Arrowhead Tom, at the top right of your screen. How you doing tonight, Tom?
I'm doing well, man. I've been looking forward to this all day. It's been a long day. Getting to talk ball with you guys has been just been good, man. It's been good for the soul. And this is an exciting time of the year. We are officially in the combine week. By the time you hear this, we'll be probably getting some of these measurements and other things out. But yeah, I'm excited to be here tonight and chat about what could be.
Oh, yeah. It's always fun talking ball with the boys. Also join us, Mr. Randy Ellenberger. How you doing tonight, Randy?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah, good to be back on. And yeah, like Tom said, this is rolling into our wheelhouse. Our favorite time of the off season where the combine kicks off and free agency. We get to talk a whole lot of draft and guys we love, guys we hate, all the good stuff. So, like Tom said, what are we going to talk about tonight? We can talk about whatever we want. So
yeah,
it's going to be awesome.
That is exactly what I said, word for word.
Exactly what he said, word for word, verbatim. Yeah, yeah. It's going to be a good night. We're just going to talk about kind of everything that's going on in the NFL and Chiefs Kingdom and whatnot. The combine started this week. All the teams and scouts and players and prospects are in Indianapolis. We've had only a little bit of interviews and stuff. We had a Brett Veach press conference. That he said a lot of nothing as Brett Veach usually does, So we'll dive into that. We've already had some prospect interviews and press conferences and stuff like that. And then starting tomorrow, which is I guess today, if you're listening to this today, we have actual on-field drills and stuff like that, measurements coming up, all that good stuff, all the real fun stuff of the combine that gets people tuned in the whole week. It's a whole week-long event now. I feel like the combine never was this long before, but now it's like the whole week going all the way through. Even Monday, I think, is when they wrap that thing up. So a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of rumors circulating around, a lot of prospects rising up the board, sinking down the board, all different, especially with these measurements coming in. The measurements are going to be real interesting. We were talking about a little bit before the show of a couple guys like Ruben Bain, for example, who not going to do any on the field workouts from what I saw, but he will at least get measured, I believe. So that'll be interesting to see. What other measurements are we curious about? That's like the first step of the combine, Tom, that we get the measurements going for some of these guys.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of defensive linemen where they're going to be looking at arm length. I know Randy has strong feelings about Cassius Howell, who's the Texas A&M edge rusher. I was listening to who was it? Somebody was like really high on him again, and I'm like, I need to go back and look. I'm kind of with Randy. I thought he was a very finesse player. I thought he was probably a situational rusher, but there are some whispers that maybe the short arm rumors with him were inaccurate, overstated, something of that nature. Because when we talk about arm length at this point, and this might sound a little silly if you're maybe not somebody who follows the draft all the time. So, statistically, there are just thresholds and outliers, and you don't want to make a career out of assembling outliers. Just like there's not a lot of NFL players out here who have been successful at 5'6", 5'7". There have been some, right? The Darren Sproles of the world, but not many. They're few and far between. There's a lot more that didn't make it than did. Same thing with the conversation about arm length for defensive and offensive linemen. Sometimes feels like it can be a little overblown, but there is I think reason for it, and what we go back to is, do you see it on tape? And sometimes you do. I think with Howell, I saw it a lot more on tape than I did with somebody like Ruben Bain. So it's not everything in the sense of like it's not going to make or break a guy, but it is. It's more so to verify, right? So if let's say they come in and Cassius Howell comes in with 33-inch arms, longer than what we think. Okay, maybe I need to go back and look at it, because sometimes, as much as you might try, there's a bias. There's an easy Same thing with like Ruben Bain. Like if you sometimes you see what you're looking for with a player, and that affects how you evaluate. So that's part of it. Um, and then there's other times where you're like, okay, I had this concern about how he holds up, in run defense, or how he, some of his hand placement technique. What does this line? Is this because he can't get his hands to that place because he can't reach it, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I've been listening to just shout out. I've tweeted this a couple times. So I grew up on Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, and just the other day I was out of desperation. I was just kind of twitching because I ran out of draft content stuff to listen to and watch. I was like, what do I do? And I got desperate and I listened to Todd McShay's new show over at the Ringer, and it is so much different. I encourage you to go check it out. But he was talking about some of the statistical correlations with like the combine events and player positions. They did a great job of kind of highlighting like one of the things that is important for like a 40-yard dash yard time isn't really important for quarterbacks, but it is important for offensive linemen, believe it or not. For defensive tackles. So we talk about like a guy like Caleb Williams, 6'5", 325.
Caleb Banks.
I'm sorry, yeah, Caleb Banks. Yeah, Caleb Williams is the quarterback. See, so like a number for him that I'm watching is we want him to be under 5:20 in the 40, so 5 seconds and 20 seconds, or
Okay.
5.20 seconds. At that size, that's kind of the tipping point. Guys who did really well, and guys who did. Caleb Banks is the guy who's built like a guy who should be able to run that. So they gave it a couple of other stats that I need to go back and listen to and write it down, but. That's been a new kind of public discourse just because we're in the age of data and analyzing things that way. So I'm excited to look at it from that perspective and learn a little bit more about some of those thresholds because I think it's changing a little bit. Our understanding of it is changing.
Yeah, there are a lot of statistics and percentages and stuff like that. You can look at all these advanced metrics and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, when you just measure a guy, you see how long his arms are, and that can really determine a lot. Randy, how I know you're a big arm measurements doesn't matter type of guy, especially for some positions, especially. But at least having if a guy measures a certain way with his arm length and stuff like that, when we talk about that, at least having the tools in the cupboard makes it a little more susceptible to be like, oh, well, maybe if his arms are an inch longer than I expected, that's at least, more potential. And there's at least the room for him to grow as opposed to, if you don't have the arm length and you can't just grow your arms longer, it's kind of one of those things. So how much does that matter to you, you feel like?
We've had this conversation for, the last couple of years when it comes to, certain parameters of arm length, that makes a guy undraftable, or he's not going to get drafted by the Chiefs because his arms are sub 33 inches or 34 or whatever it might be. There are instances where arm length and having that reach does come into play, and it is for certain spots, like tackle, you want to have a little longer arms because you want to be able to keep that defensive end at bay, and same goes the other way. Like your defensive end, you want them to have a little bit longer arms. But is this 1 inch to 2 inches like really going to make that big of a difference? Like, watch the tape. Can the dude play ball or not? Like, you sit here and the biggest knock we hear on Bane is that he's got short arms. Watch the tape. Like, he's explosive. When it comes to his pass rush, he's got more than one move. Like, he has counter moves. Like, he can anchor against the run. He can set an edge. He can stack and shed. Like, if an offensive lineman gets hands on, he's strong enough and explosive enough and twitchy enough to disengage and make a play and chase guys down. He's athletic. There are some of these dudes that just flat out can't do that. And his arms being sub 33 inches or 31 inches or whatever they might be that big of a deal in that context? I don't think it is. When it comes to it, like, you're talking about these edge guys that are going to go in the first round or the top 10 or whatever, and everybody's talking about Bain and Bailey and guys like Cassius Howell who, no. Anybody who's talking about Cassius Howell being a first or second round pick has no idea what they're talking about at this point. But like, if you're looking at like guys, Bailey versus Bain, like I will take Bain every single day and 13,000 times on Sunday before I even think about Bailey because he's an overall better player. And by watching the film, like you get that. Like I understand the
Yeah.
analytics, the numbers, and it's becoming more and more of a thing, but you still have to be able to play football. Numbers are one thing, gut instinct and football knowledge and a motor and power and speed, those are all things that matter way more to me than freaking arm length. Like that stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah, this was a big topic recently if you're to watch the Super Bowl because last year's number one tackle in the draft, Will Campbell, that was a big hit on him the whole draft process. The fact that he had a little bit shorter arms than what you typically see at some of the especially in the Chiefs standards for tackles, and a lot of people automatically project that to move him inside because of that, and then obviously in the Super Bowl he had a decent a decent meltdown as far as getting kind of exploited versus that Seahawks defense. And it seemed like
And
a
I
lot of
think
it, though. I mean, a lot of you offensive linemen and stuff who went and kind of reviewed Campbell's film didn't really seem like the arm length was necessarily. I mean, that's the easy answer to just say, oh, well, his arms are too short, so that's why he's not as successful. But
it is
there's a
the
lot of
easy
technique
answer
things.
and something to pick on. But if you look at Campbell, like it's not his
Yeah,
arm length that was his problem. It's like he's just his core strength is his problem. Like he's
Mhm.
not functionally strong at that point. Like he just gets trucked and run over. And in order to stop some of those bull rushes and moves, he has to try to punch and attack instead of absorb a hit. And then he ends up overextending. He gets over his feet and he's out of position and he's off
technique
balance. That's
things.
the problem. He's not strong enough right now. And that was my knock on him last year, going like, his feet are okay. I'm not too worried about his arm length. I just don't think he's strong enough and tough enough to play the position yet. And that showed up.
Yeah, there's certain things on both sides of the ball, or any for any position that the measurements you can make up for some of those things with technique, with some of the ways you do. And as far as Ruben Bain, for example, he's a guy despite the shorter arm length and stuff, he can really affect a game just because he has the bend, the explosiveness, the power, all the different things. So on one hand, you can there's the other end of the spectrum like Keldrick Falk, who is going to be the prototypical defensive end in the NFL, which if you look at it, like there is kind of a standard for how successful NFL players are at certain heights and weights and measurements and stuff like that. If you look at the most successful edge rushers in the NFL, most of them are going to be on the bigger and longer side. Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, Aiden Hutchinson. These guys are all prototypical like 6'4", 6'5", ideal arm length, things like that. So there's valid reasons, and then you can even dive further, like Tom was saying, with some of these advanced metrics and stuff like that, where you can really kind of gauge and whittle down. I know there's some posted on Twitter of maybe those wide receivers or something, where it's like a very small statistical percentage that you're looking at, where it's only one or two guys succeeded and the rest of them are kind of middle of the pack or failed receivers. So there's just at the end of the day, you got to look at the tape and let the tape do most of the talking, and the measurements can kind of reaffirm and kind of give more context to some of the situations. But for a lot of people, unless you're have drastic differences like Diego Pavia did at the Senior Bowl, where he was like 3 inches shorter or something like that from what they measured in, and then it's like, okay, well, I don't think this 5'9" quarterback is actually going to be. There's outliers and stuff, but
That balloon is not
I
getting
don't
dropped.
know. So
No.
it's you got that gives you a little more context sometimes, but for the most part, I feel like most of these guys, the measurements, it's only reviewing a small portion of what you're really looking out for. But hey, it's February, and that's the most important thing to be talking about at this point in time. So going past just the measurement side, drills, combine drills, things like that. Tom, you mentioned 40-yard dash times for defensive tackles and stuff like that. Are there any other neat, I guess, percentages or statistics you're looking at? And also, what drills matter the most to you guys as far as the different combine things?
Yeah, so I mean, everybody, the 40-yard dash has historically been like that's what everybody wants to watch. That's
That
what
was the most entertaining one. Yeah.
yeah, that's where the highlights come from.
You get the
Um,
simulcams of Patrick Mahomes running, or you get,
yeah,
like you get like Vita
Rich
Vea's
Eisen
simulcam.
versus Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, Rich Eisen, you get there. Yeah, so that's always the fun. That's always like the most entertaining part. It's just watching all the guys run 40-yard dashes.
yeah, but again, the correlation between these guys, a lot of these workouts, it fluctuates a lot by position. There are some positions who like there's some stronger data points to go. Oh, hey, like I mentioned, like the 40-yard dash for offensive linemen. It's not so much that your offensive linemen are going to run um, 40 yards downfield, whatever. Some of it, I was listening to some conversation about that this week, is for especially those bigger, the offensive linemen, defensive linemen. The combine is more than just gathering that data. It's a job interview. You'll hear that said 1,000 times. It's the most important job interview you'll have. All that. For those bigger guys, like you come in and you weigh, and then it's, are you prepared for this? Is your conditioning in good shape? Is your, I am so traumatized by, I want to say it was 2014. He ended up getting drafted by the Bengals. It was the offensive tackle who decided to run with his shirt off, and it just was not like, yeah, Andre Smith. There were some offensive linemen who are built like a brick house. This man was built like a Waffle House. Things were flapping and flopping, and it looked like a Baywatch commercial. And he ran poorly, and that's so. Some of it is,
I remember some other 40-yard dash where something was flapping and flopping. Something like, what did you say? I remember.
Yeah, that was a little bit different. That was Chris
Yeah.
Jones. Slightly different. Again, if Caleb Banks drops his hammer at the combine, I'm officially pounding the table for him to be drafted. So yeah, I think that there are for the edge clash this year, especially one of the two of them, like the 3-cone and the 20-yard shuttle, where you're seeing some of that change of direction. One of the things that I've been watching a little bit more with, we talk about flexibility a lot with defensive ends as almost a sense of like, we think of it almost from the top down, or at least I have, like, can you bend underneath? But one of the things that I have been kind of retraining myself to do is watch the ankles of a player and see that the ankle and the knee flexibility, and really where you start with that base, because that's where you can, because you can be twisty and bendy and that type of thing, but it's being able to maintain your speed and your power as you're bending, and then to get your feet back underneath you. And so the 3-cone drill is, I think it's underrated. One we want to keep an eye on, especially for those defensive linemen.
And I love watching the D linemen run the rings, because that's a great one too for making sure that you have good angles, your ankle flexion too, like being able to take that turn and stay low and maintain speed and some kind of leverage. Like that's a fun one for me to watch as well, especially for defensive ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all those, like, those are the big ones for the defensive end. I'm trying to think of wide receivers. This is kind of a newer one, but the gauntlet, where they line up, it's turn, catch, turn, catch, turn, catch. And you're going down the line.
Yeah, trying to run the straight line.
Yeah. So a couple things, that you're looking for with that is, are they, when they go to catch the ball, right? Some guys are body catchers, and some guys are, better at being more aggressive. Is, do they move themselves off of a line while they're catching? I think a couple of years ago, Zay Flowers was the one who, kind of like, he was the first one that I remember them like really going, wow, that was impressive, because it was like he was getting these balls chucked at him, and he just straight line. So it's like, think about it from the route running perspective, like, can you keep focus and still do your job, right? Can you still be where you're supposed to be? Same thing. You kind of look at it from a mental toughness side. If you drop a ball early, do you bounce back? Does it, whatever? Do you catch it and finish? Another one is just like we watch that drill. These guys are professionals, and they make it look relatively easy most of the time. But it's a drill you have to practice for, right? You start one way, you jump the other way, and then you go, and then you catch it, and you finish. And it's those little things. It's all right. Do they, when they're walking up there, do they know which way to face? Do they, at the end of it, do they catch it, and do they just automatically start running, or does the coach have to tell them, because you're supposed to catch the last one and run up the sideline, right? For a wide receiver, you want somebody who's got that attention to detail and somebody who is, wants to put in that level of effort and like, all right, I'm prepared for this. So some of this, again, as much as we're looking at like the physical aspect, we're also looking at the mental preparation that these guys have. Have you practiced this? Have you done this? Yeah, that's wide receivers. One that I'm interested in. One other kind of guy to watch. Denzel Boston of Washington, a wide receiver I really like. Maybe they're at 40. He shouldn't be, but really, as long as he's under 4.5, 4.55, that's the number for receivers.
That's the number.
Again, the number of receivers over 4.5 who have been successful, very, very, very slim. Even I was reading about some people who claim who go and say, oh, Jerry Rice ran a 4.6 something. And well, that was hand timed and at a pro day, not, and very unlikely that he actually ran a 4.6. But yeah, we want to see a 4.55 or below for Denzel Boston. That's another player and number just to watch. Yeah, those are off the top of my head. I'm thanks here.
I think you nailed it, Tom. Another drill I find really interesting to watch. I don't know how you guys feel about it. The drill that the DBs in them do, where they're flipping their hips. And I think a lot of the positions do that now, but that's always one that I feel like is really interesting, where they're kind of backpedaling and they're flipping their hips, and they're told to go to one direction or the other. That's always one that I feel like shows you a lot about how like the mobility of some of these guys, the how their body control is, stuff like that, which is shows once again how fluid, like the fluidity of some of the movement is. That's always a big thing where you can really see how fluid some of these guys move, especially some of the DBs and some of those drills. There's a couple other DB drills that you can really kind of see the stark difference between some of these guys as far as explosiveness and just how fluid their hips are moving and how smooth their legs are driving and all that type of stuff. That's one I always find pretty interesting. And also the offensive lineman drill, where they're kind of just running back and forth in like like 3-4 yard vicinity, and they're just following the guy.
Drill. Yep.
Yeah, that's always another one where it's just there's a lot of perseverance and a lot of toughness to try to go through that drill. I can imagine, but that's always an interesting one to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, drills like that are always great to see. Yeah, one for fluidity, but it's also balance. Like, can you keep your body in balance and not overstep and get your eyes over your knees and over your toes, and like, can you change direction without changing pad level and like having to like overcorrect your steps? Like, that's huge, especially in that DB drill. That's huge for safeties that have to be able to take 2 steps up in the run game, and all of a sudden it's play action. You have to be able to snap your hips and drop back and get in the zone without playing completely tall and completely out of position. And that's and same with the offensive line. When you're doing that mirror drill, like, the key is to making sure that these guys aren't standing straight up. They have some good flexion in their knees and ankles and their hips, and they're able to move and stay on balance. Balance is just it's such a huge part of playing offensive line and keeping your body in position without just getting out of whack. So that's a great one.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to watch. It's something going to be fun to watch some of these drills. Obviously, the big question, and we talked about it on last episode, but there's a couple guys that they've thought, maybe they'll be able to challenge for Xavier Worthy's 40-yard dash record. I don't think I see anyone who's going to compete.
I don't see it this year.
It's always interesting to see if there's any guys who can at least crack into like the high 4.2s or something like that, because that's always the extra mile. I mean, 4.3s, that's when you're really blazing. But if you get one of those, you only get like 1 or 2 of them a draft where there's a real 4.2 guy out there. So if there's any of them, pencil his name in for the Chiefs, probably. That is our type. That is get the fastest guy.
Have we turned into the Raiders of the mid 2000s, where it's fastest guy draft is now
that is similar.
guys.
You're right. That is a very similar idea.
Yeah, I hope not.
Okay, let's talk about Brett Veach. You guys hear Brett Veach's press conference the other day at the combine? He said a lot of stuff. There was a
He did
lot of good information about it. Some of the most notable ones. Talks with Travis Kelce are going, which is exciting. That's good to hear. That's stuff that I think we kind of expected. He talks a little bit about cap space and stuff after Mahomes' big restructure. The Chiefs also released Mike Dana, so shout out to Mike Dana for all the years of service that he had, but that was just kind of one of those obvious ones that we talked about early on, where it's like he's going to be a cap casualty. So there's a couple other moves that still need to be made. Maybe not Jawan Taylor, who knows? What else did you guys hear from Brett Veach's press conference that really interested you?
I don't necessarily know if I heard anything that really interested me because it was typical Brett Veach at the combine. Like he talked a lot, but he didn't really say anything. And which is like this is the time of year where you don't want to tip your hat and like give anybody any kind of notion of what direction you're leaning on which way for a certain prospect or even somebody on your roster that's a potential free agent that you might want to sign, and like his talk about Trent McDuffie. Like you can go up and down X and read 15 different analysts, and half of them say, "Oh, this is what he said right there about Trent Duffy. He's a lock to stay. Like they're going to sign him," and the other half are like, "He's gone." Like,
yeah,
no one knows because these GMs have this code speak or this smoke screen speak like locked down. So it was a whole lot of words without actually saying anything, which you're hoping maybe he gives you a little sliver of something. I don't necessarily think he gave us anything that we weren't already expecting or didn't already know. We're all hoping that he's talking to Travis. We'd love to. Everyone would love to see Travis back because everyone loves Travis Kelce. Is he at the twilight of his career? Absolutely. Are we maybe better off to a younger, more explosive tight end? Maybe. But Travis does a whole lot of things that other tight ends just flat out can't do. So I want Travis Kelce as long as he's able to move and catch footballs. So,
and then we can draft Max Clare in round 2, and he can teach Max how to be Travis 2.0, and we'll be fine. We'll just go from goat to goat.
I don't know about that, Tom. I don't know about all that, but hey,
really jumped on the Claire train. Like
I respect the love. I do.
Yeah.
I don't know about all that. Tom, how about instead of talking about Max Clare, talk about Brett Veach? One of his comments that he made, which is something you echoed a lot. I think you retweeted and everything about the best players in this draft being non-premium positions. Some of the top guys on the board, like Sonny Styles and obviously Jeremiah Love and a couple other like not premium positions are some of the best ball players in the. Yeah, Caleb Downs, the safety. Like, there's a lot of good ball players that aren't necessarily those premium positions that you think about. And I think Brett was pretty firm in the fact that and he's usually always been like this, but he's always been a kind of a best player available guy over necessity and just drafting for positional need, which I think is the right thing. I think we've talked about it's always the right thing to do, get good players over just drafting for a positional need. But how do you feel about some of those options for the Chiefs being on the board that aren't as traditional guys?
Yeah, you know what? The one that intrigued me when he name dropped it was Sonny Styles. I love Sonny Styles. But we just don't have that need, right? But I love Sonny Styles. I think he's going to be special. And I've thought that for a minute. I think obviously if we talked about Arvell Reese as the edge guy, but the reason why Arvell Reese could do that is because Sonny Styles was just an absolute stud in the middle of that field, in the middle of that defense. I think his story is awesome as a guy who came in as a secondary player and then beefed up real quick to play linebacker. I could go on. So I've said some of this before, and it's like I kind of joke that I know Brett Veach is listening to me, but he's not following my directions. I suspect that. So one of the other things he mentioned was like the convertible contracts, and like here's the deal: the Chiefs are just going to have to be active in free agency. They're just going to have to. And I think he wants to go into the draft where he is able to take the best player available without being handicapped into a certain player, into a certain spot. Um, I think somebody pointed this out. I was listening to the Athletic podcast today, and football show podcast. They talked about last year's running back class and how the Chiefs were probably looking at taking a running back in the fourth round with that Jalen Royals pick, and then you look at like everybody who went before it, and it was like just a whole run of running backs. I think the Chiefs don't want to get pigeonholed into a spot where they are without a guy they're comfortable starting week one with, which is just going to be tricky with some of the things that they have to do with this roster and with like free agency. So, I do expect them to go out and sign a defensive end, if not two. I expect them to be in the market for a running back. I expect them to maybe look at some wide receivers. I'd really like them to bring back Tyquan Thornton. I think that makes a lot of sense. Um, you know, I think that they're going to go into the draft and there will still be needs on this team. Like, oh yeah, we could upgrade, we could get a guy, better here. But I think they want to be able to take the best player on their board. Um, and I think that is a sound philosophy with where this team is at. I think the other thing that stands out to me is um, all of those players that he talked about, with the exception of maybe Sonny Styles and maybe not, because I mean, the Chiefs may be moving on from Drew and they may be, moving on from Leo. Um, all those guys are needs: running back, defensive line, linebacker,
Safety.
Caleb Downs, right? So like those, the defensive line was a little bit thing. The other part of that is if he understands that those are the best players in the draft, but they may not be going in that order because of the positional value. If you're sitting there with a board and you've got Jeremiah Love and Caleb Downs and um, Sonny Styles sitting there, like you're a couple picks in front of the Rams. Maybe you move down to 14, and because somebody wants to come up with Ty Simpson. Um, and I know Garrett. I know you're smiling at that, but I don't think that's.
I don't know.
We'll see how the combine goes, but I
don't know about that, Tom.
Your guy, and I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be interested. I'm not saying that makes sense.
I don't know.
That's how I think we're trending.
The trade back thing is always very interesting. That always, I think us as fans always feel like it's so easy. Oh, if you don't like where you're at, or if you have some options, just trade back. And you can go into any mock draft simulator and you can just, oh, we got an offer from the Lions to trade back 4 spots or something, and we'll get all these picks back. Look how great of a deal this is. In reality, it's very rare that, some of the, like we talk about it every draft, basically, how we're all, oh, there's might be so many trades, blah, blah, blah. And then there usually doesn't end up being a lot of trades. Mm-hmm. I think last year's draft, there might've been a little bit more than usual, but I think the year before that, there was only a couple first round trades, period. Like sometimes it doesn't really, especially in a draft like this, where there's not a lot of quarterbacks. Like that's always a big thing that teams trade up for is quarterbacks. Maybe you could see some teams trading up for some tackles that are getting the top 10, there's a couple guys like that, or maybe just some of these really, like we said, some of these really good players that just aren't at the normal positions that are like the coveted positions. Like maybe some team has a really high grade on Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs, and they feel like that's the piece that they need to trade up for. So there's a chance, but most of the time, it always takes 2 to tango, and sometimes the cost of moving up, 3-4 spots in the first round to get up from 13 to 9, is really not that worth it for some teams. And so we'll see. We'll see what teams have a lot of capital. There's definitely teams that have the capital that aren't afraid to be aggressive, but it's always just tough when there's not like the obvious quarterback. It's like you're trading up for, you could be a team like the Falcons, for example, last year, who traded up a future first for James Pierce. And I don't know how well that's going so far. So,
that was as disastrous as it goes. I only say that because I agree with you, and probably a week or two ago, I would have had the same thought. I'm putting it out there that the Ty Simpson market is warming up.
Yeah, just true. We got to pump it up. If we can get Ty Simpson up there,
No, it just is,
whoever.
and I think he's gonna. Uh,
He's
he's
a
a
top 10 pick in my
coach's
book. Book him.
all that stuff that they love to talk about with a quarterback. He's going to do well in the interviews. Somebody, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying he's trending that way. He's going to throw at the combine, and I think teams just like that idea. Um, I think that it's going to be, and people are going to look at him and go, "Could that be our Jackson Dart? Could that be our?" But you're going to want to. You have to get ahead.
There's always those quarterbacks that kind of make you scratch your head. Not only scratch your head, but like have this meteoric rise, late.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're even talking about my boy Cole Payton from NDSU being potentially the number 2 quarterback in this draft class.
Mhm.
Like it's not very often you come into a draft class like this that is that devoid of like that star caliber, like 3 to 5 quarterbacks that are just like, all right, these are the dudes. Like, and even Mendoza for a Heisman winner, like nothing about Mendoza blows me away. He's like a younger, a little bit more athletic Kirk Cousins in my eyes. Like he's gonna be a good football player. I don't necessarily know if he's like the face of the franchise. He's this superstar you build around. Like I think he's one of those guys that's similar to Sam Darnold, that you're going to draft high, but you had better have a pretty solid core around him, because I don't know if he's that good to really carry your franchise and elevate your players.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just not that guy in this class. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Especially, it's going to be interesting to see how some of those quarterbacks shake out and like where they kind of fall. But it's not going to push. But like without those guys jumping up in there, there's not going to be like a few of these guys getting pushed back farther in the draft because those quarterbacks are going to go high. Like
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
see
There's not
Simpson going in the
quarterbacks.
top 10 or the top 15. Like maybe he's going to be in that 20 range. Maybe Cole Payton sneaks into the end of the first round like, Lamar Jackson did.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes it can get a little crazy. Up around especially in the first round, teams trading back to try to get first year options and stuff or 5th-year options and things like that. And even the guaranteed money aspect of it too, where it's like that's something that people kind of forget. It's like these top 10 picks, it's a lot of money that you're getting shown out to these guys. I think I saw somewhere like if the Chiefs drafted Jeremiah Love at 9, he would be like the top 5 highest, most guaranteed running back money already, like as soon as he comes in. So that's a big price that you're playing. So that's even a factor for teams trading back. If you're trying to save a little bit of money, it's a little bit of cap room by trading back 5 picks, and another team can afford it. That can be a factor too. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of movement happens. Back to the Tom mentioned something about the combine and throwing Ty Simpson throwing at the combine. That's a trend that we've seen a little bit more often, where some of these top guys aren't doing work at the combine. They're instead waiting to do work at their pro day instead. I know Fernando Mendoza is one of those guys that's not going to be throwing at the combine. He's still there for interviews and meetings and stuff like that, which is really the most important part of the combine anyways for a lot of these guys, especially guys from smaller schools that don't necessarily have 15, 20, 30 NFL scouts going to their pro day. So like this is kind of your main shot to get in front of those guys. And then you might have a random area scout show up to your pro day afterwards. But it's like for some of these guys, like obviously Fernando Mendoza, like he can just go and have his own pro day at Indiana and throw with all of his own receivers and have it a lot more scripted, you could say, which is good for the prospect for sure, but also probably not as great for teams evaluating them. So usually, you see it with guys that are kind of locks, like Ruben Bain's not doing any drills and stuff. Like he's a lock for a top 10 anyways, so he doesn't really have to worry about it. But how much does that factor into your guys' mind of evaluating guys when they're not, and throwing into the unknown environment of the combine where you don't know who you're throwing to or who you're getting thrown the ball to and stuff like that. And you can instead kind of just save all that energy and effort for the pro day where it's a lot more scripted and you're a lot more comfortable in your own facility and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think. Oh, Randy.
Oh, go ahead. No, all right.
It's changed a lot over the years. It used to be teams would really poo-poo at that, and that you want to compete at the end. Like, it's the combine is an important part of the process for a lot of guys. I'll use an example of Jordan Tyson, right? Um, they like he can't run. He's hurt. He's banged up. There's no now. Could you argue that he could, suck it up and run anyways? But then what? He runs poorly, re-injures himself, and then continues to get that label, or is it better to wait? Um, I think you can look at um, the situations, right? Ruben Bain isn't doing it. He's doing the interviews and that type of thing, but he's not doing the testing. And I was like, oh, okay, well, he's there. Really, the biggest thing is the arm length. Like, that's going to be for him. I would have liked to see him do the testing. Um, I so I think it's more player by player than it had been historically. Historically, it used to be that, but like it's also Fernando Mendoza is going number one. He's not looking over his shoulder and worried that Ty Simpson is going to sneak up on him. You know, the other piece with that I appreciate about what Mendoza is doing is, yeah, he's throwing, but he's also throwing to his receivers. At Indiana, he's got a couple of guys, Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper Jr., who are legitimate prospects who could be guys the Chiefs are looking at on day two. Um,
I would
I think if that's the case, then you are doing them a favor and everybody a favor by having an environment that you're familiar with. Part of the reason why quarterbacks and wide receivers sometimes don't want to do that is because, like, you have certain chemistry with receivers and things. On the flip side of that, you're about to be on a whole new team and you're about to be, doing that in the NFL.
Let's see how you figure it out.
So, some of it is how much can we measure the adaptability. That's why I thought Ty Simpson, choosing to throw was a good choice for him to kind of show some more of that on his end. So, again, it's not as universally seen as a problem as it had been historically, but I think there's a lot of players who want to wait, but this year's a little bit different. Actually, I think we're going to see more combine workouts just because I think there's a lot of players who have like ground to gain. Caleb Banks is a great example. He's had a good senior bowl. Peter Woods is a guy I keep hearing about. The athletic part of him. He was a guy who's considered to be this, borderline top 10 pick. Had a down year. Maybe we see some of that. T.J. Parker, both those Clemson guys. And some of these guys, it's okay. Can they run? Can they hit those thresholds? The safety class, I think, has a couple of guys who have the chance to separate themselves and really show out. And everybody's, Nick Imanware is the hot name of, from last year's draft, and people are going to be looking for that. Maybe there's somebody like a McNeil Warren out of Toledo who comes in at 6'3.5" and runs, in the 4.4s, and everyone kind of turns their head. So there's a lot of guys who just have a lot to gain by putting up a good combine week.
Yeah, definitely. Randy, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page with Tom. Like, it's it used to be looked down upon, but like some of these guys, they're locks to where they're going to be. Like, they don't have anything to prove. Like, the only thing that could happen is for something to catastrophically go wrong.
Yeah,
somebody get a stupid injury, whether it's a hamstring or a knee or an ankle or whatever it might be, or just like all of a sudden just run like this weirdly bad 40 time where they can't bench, and it's just like some of these guys, they're just it's working out on the combine would actually do more harm than good. Now, with that being said, like, I want dudes to compete. Like, I want guys that want to like show up and compete in everything, single thing they do. Like, when I was coaching college football, like, we would have guys compete in the freaking stretch line. Like, who could get lower? Like, who could do the stretch lower and slower than the other guy, not faster and just get to the end of the line. Like, who's going to finish longer than somebody else? Like, I want competitors. I want football players. I want hungry guys that are there to show what they have and prove they're the best, and and to put on a show and like just say like I'm the dude, like the coach in me wants to see that. Um,
Yeah.
but I understand the business side of this things, and like some of these guys, like they literally like they're the top player in their position, like they don't have anything to gain from participating in the drills. So showing up, doing the interviews, going through the medicals, like the medicals are huge for some of these
Yeah,
guys.
it's big too.
That's some of the biggest things. Like what's Tyson's knee look like? Like what he's not going to run. Like I want to know. Like is Banks's foot? That was his injury this year, right? He had a foot issue. Like is that completely healed? Like I want to see that dude run some drills. I want to see him run. I want to see and hear coming through the medical that thing's not an issue anymore. But I mean, it's the competition piece for me. But I also understand that some of these guys, it's not going to do any. It's not going to do them any good to do the drills or participate. So
Mhm. Yeah.
did
Garrett has
we
followed
lose?
into the void apparently. So, Brandon, you and I are officially
We are
left here
steering the ship.
unadvised. This is dangerous and unprecedented territory.
A little flashback to some Kingdom Recon. We can just
Yeah,
take baby and roll.
just take over. Um, yeah. So okay. So let's carry this conversation. I'm not as good of a host. I'm sure Garrett will return once he has been. Maybe he'll get sucked up into a tornado and dropped in Kansas. To Vaza. Okay, so let's just do this. Let's talk about this. We're talking about combine drills. We're talking about people. Give me your 5 guys that you think are going to just have a great combine, and we can go back and forth. I'll give you some of mine because I know I'm putting you on the spot. But it doesn't have to be even guys that the Chiefs would want. If your boy Cole Payton is going to put on a show, this is your chance to hype him up. Um, yeah. So you give me your 5 guys that you're wanting to watch at the combine. Oh look, Garrett's back.
I'm back.
Okay, 5 guys that I mean, I love Caleb Downs. I think like he is like the one I think can't miss prospect in this draft. Like he's that safety that everybody wants on their team. Like he's the field general. He's the Eric Berry. He's the he's that Cam Chancellor type. He's the even Kyle Hamilton. Like he is so versatile and he is so good at what he does that like everybody wants a guy on their team like him. But he's also like Veach was saying, he's in that position that's not a premium spot. Like if we took Caleb Downs at 9, I would be ecstatic. I mean, I know we have a couple of young safeties on our team, but there's also a couple of young safeties on our team that just make you scratch your head and go like, what the F are you doing? Like you don't see those moments from a Caleb Downs in college. Now, granted,
Mm-hmm.
college different game. I get that. But I think he's that guy like he's going to go through the meetings and he's going to do the drills and he's going to be like, all right, this dude he's the guy that everybody thinks he is. Some guys that I really want to watch, in positions that we're high on, like I want to watch Gabe Jackas go through the drills. Like I think he's a super complete edge player. I think he's underrated. I think he's maybe gotten a little bit more hype here just as of recent weeks. I want to see him go through the drills. I want to see when we were talking going through the hoop drills and the bags and whatever else. Like I want to see his hip flexion, his ankle. Like I want to see him get the bend and make the arc and do the things. Um, my boy Cole Payton. He was a 1-year starter at NDSU. He is a fantastic athlete. His arm is better than people think, but some people are going to bag on him that he's a lefty and his delivery is a little slow. I will 100% agree with that. His delivery is a little long, it's a little slow. Can a good quarterback coach tweak mechanics and improve that? Absolutely. He gained a lot of hype, through his All-Star game. So, yeah, I mean, those are just kind of 3 off the top of my head. But
Yeah.
Woods, the defensive tackle from Like,
Let me throw you a lifeline. I'll take some. We mentioned him earlier. Keldrick Falk, I think.
yeah, he's another one. Like,
Yeah.
I want to see the agility with him because everybody
Yep.
bangs on his pass rush moves. Like, I want to see him move.
See if he's
Yeah.
really a physical freak like he says he is.
He
Right.
says he's a physical freak. I love that comment from him today. If you didn't catch that, he said, he was asked about, he has met with the Chiefs, which isn't a surprise. They're going to meet with probably every defensive lineman who's, thought to go in the first round. But I think one of the youngest players in this draft, prototypical size, is built like a defensive lineman, should be built. Just to be together and really, and I was a big defender of him and said, all right, they lined him funny and that kind of thing. Man, he's just got room to learn, But I think when you talk about Kansas City specifically, there's good teachers around that building. But yeah, the flexibility in the ankles and in the base, I think, are going to be really important. I do want to see how Caleb Downs runs. There's a lot of corners in this class that I think are interesting. And when we talk about, and we haven't talked about this much, but I'm now hearing this more from like the mainstream people, the Trent McDuffie trade possibility. Jesse Newell with the Athletic was talking about that, the Chiefs team reporter, and it's like, the Chiefs do pay their guys, but they don't pay their corners. So it could be interesting. A guy like Keith Abney, the second out of Arizona State, is an outside corner. Intrigues me. Avion Terrell, another Clemson guy, who I think is probably going to go in the first round, but he's kind of the undersized nickel corner, but just plays with great instincts. How he runs will be interesting.
Who a guy like say Trent does get traded. Okay.
Mhm.
We all know that Trent's sweet spot is in the slot, being able to match up and move and play inside. If McDuffie does go, a guy that I am like, circle this dude, we need him to replace that type of position, is Keontae Scott.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Yep. I'm with you on that one. 100%.
Combination of his ability to play safety and corner, drop down in the slot, play in the box, be physical in the run game.
That sounds like Steve Spagnuolo to me. Yeah,
I am a big Keontae Scott fan. If Trent goes, I think that's a guy we have to target.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest arguments for Trent.
He has to be that guy.
That's one of the biggest arguments for Trent to go, I feel like, is just the amount of, especially, it's been the case for the past couple of years, but the amount of like really talented defensive backs that are, corners, slot guys, nickel players that can kind of do everything like that. Like that's been a pretty, that's been an uptick of guys recently. So that makes, especially with the Chiefs' luck of drafting corners, period. Like that just is another, really, we've talked about, that's another real reason that you would trade Trent, because you can probably find another one.
I mean, I love Shamari Connor. I think he does a lot of great things in the blitz game and his physical ability, but I can't watch him drop down in the slot and try to cover slot receivers anymore. Like that's not his game. Yeah. That's just not. And as much as Spags wants it to be, like that's not where he needs to be. Same with Hicks. Like we need somebody who's more fluid in that spot, like a Keontae Scott.
I'll give you one that I think is going to blow up, and I need to go back and do a deeper dive on his tape, because he was. And you talk about a Spagsy corner, the kid out of South Carolina, Brandon Cisse. There's some whispers that he's going to run really, really well. He's 6'1", 190 something. And he doesn't have a lot of ball production. So again, Steve Spagnuolo's probably already seen him. He's got one college interception, but this guy is an absolute dog. I mean, when I heard that, I was a little surprised, because it's like, he kind of feels like one of those bigger corners who's going to, be a little more grabby, a little more handsy, a little more physical. But he's allegedly going to test really well. I wouldn't mind if he doesn't, because I think if he's a guy in the second round, but just so competitive with the ball in the air, and with, it just makes you have to earn every catch against him. But if he's also got that plus athleticism, I think that's a big one. for them. And the South Carolina, like whatever is going on with their football program at any given time, they're generally pretty good at coaching and developing defensive backs, especially
they got
corner
some dogs at DB.
some dudes who come through there. But yeah, he's physical. He hits. Randy, you'll know. I mean, you'll appreciate when the team is running a screen, a wide receiver screen, or the wide receivers out there blocking a corner. Like sometimes those guys are just like it's almost like a handshake. Like yeah, we'll just take this one off. Like there's like we're gonna try to look and put the effort in, but really we're just hanging out over here. You can't do that with Cisse. He will run through your face.
And that's exactly what I want to see out of somebody that's going to drop down and play that game. Is like, yeah, just like Caleb Banks, like I'm going to run through a MFer's face. Like
that's a good quote.
That's the quote so far of interviews and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely, run through that wide receiver who doesn't want to block in the first place, and make him think twice about running that quick screen.
Yeah, and I want to see Caleb Banks back that comment up. There's some. So I'll throw him on my list. I'm sure he's on it. There's concerns about maturity. There's concerns about focus. There's concerns about effort. And this is your case. Again, are you going to run well? Are you going to show up in shape? Are you going to test well? Or are you going to answer well? Right? That's so huge for him. That could be the difference between him being, a top 20 pick and a top 50 pick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty big. Garrett, do you have anybody who you are really looking forward to watching?
Just a couple of wide receivers. I mentioned it on last episode. Jacoby Lane out of USC is a fun wide receiver that I think as a day 2 guy could really be a good option for the Chiefs. Also, Zachariah Branch, former USC guy, now at Georgia. I think he'll really impress some people with just I guess he has a chance to really impress some people with some of the explosivity numbers that he can put up because he was a really, really talented dude when he was at USC. And Georgia is usually pretty good at developing guys. So those are a couple that I can definitely say off the top of my head. Also, a couple of the Texas Tech has a lot of fun players like the Rodriguez, David Rodriguez, his first name, I believe. Dante Corleone, the big D tackle, he's really fun. Cole Wisniewski. So there's a couple guys that are interesting prospects to me that even, I was kind of a hater on him early on in the process, but after watching him a little more, Romello Height, I feel like I don't know. I might have to reevaluate him and based off some of his combine numbers, I might be a little more interested in him. Watching him and David Bailey. The more you watch both of them at the same time, if you watch both of them at the same time, it's like it's not the biggest gap. I'll say that. I don't think it's the biggest gap between the two, which is damning for David Bailey and pretty good for Romello Height. So it's one of those things. I'm kind of in the same boat of Randy. I'm up and down on David Bailey. He seems. The tape tells you one thing, and then some of the measurements, I think the testing will tell you another thing. If he tests well, it's a guy that I still wouldn't be super mad at picking at 9 if he was there. Just it's more development than anything that you're kind of banking on from him, and not in a guy that feel like you can be an immediate playmaker. Which there's not many of those guys anyways that you can say you can just kind of put out there and they're immediately. Really good playmakers. Another guy on the edge board, and we talked about it pre-draft a little bit, Akeem Mesidor is another guy that, man, it's just like if his age wasn't a thing, like if you just didn't look at his age, like you would say, man, this is a top 10, top 15 pick in the draft. So he might impress people even more by some of his numbers that he puts up.
I think that some of that age stuff is going to be less of a concern, especially if he has a strong combine. I'm going to give you guys one more that I don't want to give you, because I don't want to like him, because I have an aversion to this team, especially wide receivers from this team. Chris Brazzell II out of Tennessee.
Great name.
6'5", 200 pounds, has a stupid face.
Stupid face.
There's talks that he could run. Look at it. Go Google him. I don't like his face, all right? And he's from Tennessee, and Tennessee wide receivers. There's talks that he could be 6'5", 200 pounds. kind of this idea that he's going to run in the low 4.4s, possibly in the 4.3s. And Garrett, you can watch this and tell me what you think, because you saw this with Xavier Worthy before I saw it. When you talk about the ability to track the deep ball,
Mm-hmm.
Brazel has it in, yeah, just bucket loads of it, and has some good adjustments to it, to the ball downfield. Um, Tennessee's offense is kind of weird with their receivers, and sometimes it's a very kind of simplified routes. Like it's like we're either running drags or flies, like short screens or whatever. Um, I think he's got you know the movement skills to be a better route runner. I think he's a good route runner for the system he's in. He is just the size and his aggressiveness with going to catch the ball. He's gonna be one that I'm watching in the gauntlet drill, especially. Um, Somebody compared him to like Christian Watson, which if he's healthier than that, then that's a pretty solid move. But man, he just plucks the ball from the air. He tracks it deep downfield. I don't know if he'll give you much after the catch, but I think if he's burning by people, who cares? If he's
I
picking up.
don't necessarily. I don't know if he's gonna run. Like I'm expecting like a 4.5 from him. Like that's, I mean, just the eyeball. That's what I see. Like he reminds me of Plaxico Burress.
Ooh,
Long, lanky,
very lanky.
good.
Yeah.
He's a natural hand catcher. He tracks the ball well. Like he's a good like go up and get the ball, track the ball kind of guy. But yeah, he's not overly strong. He's not going to really break any tackles. He's not going to break anybody's ankles out in the open field. But he's like that long, lanky like X receiver that can just go up and kind of fight for some jump balls. Like that's who he reminds me of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the big thing when I look at him, and you mentioned the deep ball tracking and stuff like that, he's a little bit different when I look at him compared to like Xavier Worthy was. I think it's even maybe a little bit better in a certain aspect, and reminds me a little bit of a certain other former Chiefs receiver. The Worthy was really good at tracking like the deep ball as far as like over his head, tracking it in the air, stuff like that. When he's like full sprint type running. Razzle, he looks like a little more. Like he can kind of track the ball if it's like underthrown in the air a little more, and kind of has a little bit more adjustments to the ball in that sense. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that a former Chiefs wide receiver who's now a free agent does really, really well. And that would be Tyreek Hill, a guy who, yeah, he has great deep ball tracking on normal stuff, but like he was always a guy, that could find the ball in midair and kind of contort his body somehow to just come back to the ball and get to it. That's something that Xavier Worthy definitely still lacks, and that's definitely a trait that I think this offense, the Chiefs' offense in general, lacks still. And Brazel has a little bit of that. That's definitely he has got a little bit of that. I think that's something that the Chiefs should try to target in some type of wide receiver this draft, is a guy who can do that, especially with the amount of off-script plays that we have on this offense and things like that, where it's like, sometimes the ball isn't necessarily going to be placed exactly where you think it is.
Christ Lance. Excuse me.
You have to find it in the air and go through a defensive back potentially, or things like that, where you're playing in even those situations where you're kind of playing defense on the ball sometimes if it's a little bit misthrown, and all of a sudden you become the defensive back. That's something that Worthy still has some room to grow on. I think that's something that still lacks from the Chiefs offense with our current receivers that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry for my sneeze/cough explosion of Bryce Lance right there, but I am circling pick 109. If we hold on to that, like that's his sweet spot, I think, right there, because he does all those things. He's that's making adjustments in the air, a better deep threat than you originally anticipate. But strong at the point of attack, and he can go up and get a ball. Like, I know everybody's they're going to bag on me for being an NDSU homer, and I will fully admit to that. But if you're not familiar with Bryce Lance's game, like, go out and watch some film. Like, he's 6'3", he's 210, 215 pounds. He's strong, and everybody's like, oh, he's Trey Lance's brother. Trey Lance flopped. Different player, different position. Bryce is going to run in that 4.5 range. And I'm telling you, 4th round sweet spot at 109 would be fantastic. I would be doing backflips if I could.
Did he at least play games in college?
Absolutely.
Did he play more than like 6 games in college? That's a big one. I think that's a pretty big one. I feel like little underrated trait. Playing games in college. That's always a big one.
Bryce had what? I think he led the league in touchdowns. Not last year, the season before. I think he had 19 touchdowns on the year. Like,
okay. That's good.
He's a dude.
Just ask him to play games. If his name's Lance from Dakota, you just got to hope that he's played some games. So some guys, they have a lot of games under their belt, like we've talked about with the NIL and some of the things, some of the COVID years that we're still very catching the tail end of, where the guys are like Akeem Messidor, who are really older and have a lot of experience in college football. That's a more common thing nowadays. So sometimes, especially now that we're wrapping up the COVID era and all that type of stuff. I mean, NIL is still pretty prominent, but this is, and probably the next draft are going to be the last ones where we're really seeing that effect of some of those older prospects until it maybe reverts back to normal a little bit with guys who are early coming out 21, 22, 23. But we'll see. Sometimes if I know who was that player, Tom, a couple drafts ago, who was edge rusher, Army, Navy, one of those, and he was like
for Army, yeah.
He's not. I'm blanking on him because I'm mixing him up with Landon Jackson, but he's not Landon Jackson.
Yeah, I know he played for Army.
But everyone was like kind of a fan with him, but he was like 25 or 26 coming out, and I was like, nope, take him off the board. And I think he's been all right as a pro. He plays for the Patriots, I think, now.
Are you sure we're talking about the same guy?
I'm not sure, but he's an Army. He played at Army.
That sounds more like Keon White than
Keon White. It might be Keon White.
No, Keon White was a Georgia Tech guy.
Oh. Yeah. Well, it might not. Am I thinking? I'm thinking you guys know who I'm thinking of, right? But
I just can't think of his name right now. I have to fire up the old Google. Yeah.
So anyway, that'll happen sometimes where there's a guy who's just an older prospect and that dings him down. And in this world, I mean, hey, you gotta accept it sometimes. If he's a good player, obviously we did a couple drafts ago. We had a very big age discrepancy where we drafted Kingsley Suamataia and he was 21, and then we drafted Hunter Norzad and he was like 25. So you get those big swings sometime, but
Andre Carter second.
Andre, yeah,
there you go. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the era that we're living in these days, and you gotta kind of navigate those waters. So I think we've done pretty good for tonight, fellas. I don't know how you feel. I think we've got a good hour and plus episode here tonight, talking combine, talking draft prospects, talking all kinds of fun stuff. Everything that you want and need from prospects at the combine, you got it from us, right?
Can I throw one more thing out here to give you a curveball? Because we talked a lot of combine, we talked a lot of draft, but this is the whole off season. There's more things going on.
True.
Each of you, one free agent. You would add one free agent from the market. Not Breece Hall, because he's not getting hit in the market. Kenneth Walker sounds like he will, but Breece Hall staying at least for one more year in New York. One player, who are you taking to close us out? Put you
Randy,
on the spot.
you go first. I feel like mine's a funny, controversial one. It's not controversial, probably.
I think. I mean, the smart move that would allow us to truly take best player available at 9 and give us more options. Like, I think Kenneth Walker would be phenomenal roaming Arrowhead. I mean, I've been a fan of his since Michigan State. Like, when healthy, which has been a little bit of a knock, he's everything you want in an NFL running back. Like, his playoff run, the Super Bowl shows what he's capable of. And I think that really, I mean, I'm a big Love fan. Don't get me wrong. But I think if we can land Kenneth Walker or ETN as a free agent, that really frees us up to literally take best player available at 9, or even listen to trade back talks if that does pop up. but we have, like Veach did say, like we have to be more dynamic at the running back position and have more production there. And I think a proven veteran gives us a little bit more of an edge there uh,
Mhm.
to do that type of thing. So I think, yeah, Kenneth Walker, ETN, I think that's our target area of really what makes us better immediately and gives us more flexibility.
I would agree with that for sure. Yeah, Walker and ETN are both ideal signings in my opinion. I'm gonna go with Tyreek Hill. Whatever, I I'm, I just want Tyreek Hill back. I ain't gonna lie to you. I mean, and hopefully it's for a little bit cheaper, prove it deal. He's coming off the injury, so he might not. He might even miss a couple games. I don't care. I thrive on chaos like that. I am much more like I get the argument to not bring him back completely. Like invest in the future. He'd be a 1-2 year rental at most. I'd rather it'd be smart to draft a guy or sign a guy to a long term contract or something along those lines. But I don't know. I would like to see Tyreek Hill back. I think it would be awesome to run it back one more time with him or two more times. I don't know however many more years he's got in the tank. I wouldn't. I'm cool with it. If you look at his tape last year pre-injury, now obviously pre-injury is a pretty big injury, but like he's still Tyreek Hill. Like let's not get confused. He is still a very very good player, and yeah, and running it back one more time, him and Pat and Kelsey, I think would be really cool. And yeah, so I don't think you compromise your future by doing that either. And then
No,
it's just
I'd love to see Tyreek back too. Like if it was a Chiefs friendly contract, 2-3 years tops, because I think he realized, okay, I went somewhere else. I got a bag. I got a bunch of money. Grass isn't necessarily always greener on the other side. Like he really likes winning and competing and playing in the playoffs and going on those runs. Now with the injury, I, I don't know. I don't know. I'd love to see him back on a friendly deal. Why not?
what about you, Tom? Who's your dream free agent?
Um, I'm looking at defensive line. Obviously, that's I, I think that's the biggest need on this team. And even if you draft a defensive line early on, like I just think you need more guys. You have to take some of that pressure off. So, I have tried to like talk myself out of this player because I feel like maybe I just like him too much because I liked him as a draft player and um, oh, I'm freezing up.
You are. We still hear you, but for some
Oh, you can
reason,
still hear me. Yeah, that's
yeah.
my way of getting it. Um, give me Joseph Osai from Cincinnati. He's been a
Okay.
rotational guy. Hasn't had a chance to play more than plays about 55% of the snaps. Back to back 5 sack seasons. 25 years old, right? Probably, maybe he might be younger than Messidor. um,
There's a
uh,
chance. Yeah.
I loved him at Texas. Long arms. Um, yeah, I'm I'm trying not to, but that's my guy. That's my guy that I'm like, all right.
I saw Randy shaking his head over there. I don't know if Randy's on board. I don't know if
Well,
I'm on board either.
He's
Every
one
time
of
I
those,
think of
one of those guys that he's just it's super frustrating because he is athletic and he's got some skill and he's got some talent, but there's something missing that the production just doesn't show up. Like his ability to finish has always been my question. To sustain play consistently versus the run has never been his strong suit. Like
mhm.
if in a make believe world, if you could pick any free agent and it didn't matter the contract and blah 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 whatever, like give me the other Bengal that's going to hit the market.
that's what I thought. That's
Give
what I
me
thought.
Hendrickson. Like
Nah.
I'd rather have that guy because that guy can do
Trey
anything
Hendrickson is a dog.
to be like.
Yeah.
He's a
I
complete player.
He still got some in him too. He still got some left in him.
He's a savvy veteran now. He plays. He can rush the passer. He can play the run. He's a he's a that if I'm going to take a Cincinnati guy, that's the guy.
whenever I think of Joseph Osai, I can't think of anything else besides just like being on the tail end of one of the most embarrassing moments where the late push out of bounds to Mahomes at the AFC Championship game, and then he also hurts his knee at the same
already
time.
helped us win a Super Bowl. I mean, come
I
on.
know, but when you're on the tail end of something like that, I don't know if you can. Now, I will say Justin Reed was the one exception to that because he was on the tail end of the fake punt in the 24-0 Texans game, and then he came over and redeemed himself. But I don't know. This is a little bit different. I think. I think I'm out on Osai. But hey, Trent Hendrickson, come on down, Hendrickson. Come on down, Trey Hendrickson. That'd be
You
cool.
want to win some games? Friendly
Win
contract.
some games, yeah.
If you even just bring him in as a guy who is a sub rusher, whatever, I think he's. I don't know. I'm an Osai guy. Hate me if you want.
Osai guy.
Back 5 sack seasons on 616 snaps last year, 576 the year before. I think he's got. When you talk about burst and all that stuff, like he's got it. 34-inch arms. He's 91st percentile, 10-yard split. Pretty solid guy. And he's 25. That's the thing is let's say you get him on a 2 or 3 year deal. He's 25 years old. He's going to be motivated to keep playing, trying to earn another contract. And he's like, I think there's still meat on the bone for him. Like Randy said, it's kind of frustrating sometimes because you're like, there's more here. Why isn't it here? Maybe it's coaching. Maybe
Like
it's playing for
Osai and Owe, for Baltimore that got traded to the Chargers. Like they're the same player to me. Like,
oh no, not at all, Randy. That's blasphemy.
yeah.
Randy, we're gonna you bring your 31-inch arms and we'll go meet in the parking lot.
Who's that other guy out of that?
You guys missed that in the pre-show. We were talking arm length, so I had a yardstick here. I have 31-inch arms, so like
I forget who I liked out of that draft class the most. That one edge rusher.
I'm only 5'10", so
Who's that one edge rusher out of Azeez Ojulari? Is he a free agent? I liked him.
He is,
I liked him coming out of that draft class the most, but
yeah, he's.
I don't think Spags is gonna want any of these guys. I hate to break it. I don't think if Spags is having to sign. I mean, if you draft and force a guy on him, that's one thing. But I don't know if signing any guys that's under 6'4" is gonna be the move for Steve Spagnuolo. But we'll see. We'll see. Could be a crazy offseason. Could get some bad. We talked about it. You got to find some value in the value bins this offseason. You got to find some guys who have been a little down and might be cheaper guys that you can kind of bet on the upside of. And who knows, you might sign a guy like Joseph Osai and you might unlock some of the potential out of him or things like that. So you never know. But we're gonna have to hit have some hits out of the value bin this offseason in free agency. So gotta start looking deeper than the top 20, 30, 40, 50 available free agents. You really got to go down that list to be like, all right, what kind of specific traits can we just get out of this guy and have him be a meaningful contributor to the team, a la like Drew Tranquill was a couple years ago. Yeah. So, okay, yeah. I think that's it. I think we nailed it. I think we had a good episode here. I appreciate everyone for rocking with us tonight or today, whenever you're listening to this. It could be at all times of the day, really. It doesn't really matter, depending on what time zone, area, region of the world. There's a couple international listeners, so shout out to you guys if you're listening somewhere internationally. Let us know. Be sure to like and subscribe, comment, all that stuff on our YouTube. YouTube's Kingdom Says. Follow us Twitter, X. Nope, that's the same thing. X, Facebook, Instagram. Any of those platforms at Kingdom Says Pod. We'll be on there. Facebook.
X. It's always Twitter to me.
I know, yeah, but it's been X for probably 2 years now at least. Maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. I also always call it Twitter, but I mean the logo is an X, so you gotta say an X. You gotta say the X. So
I don't like
on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast at, we're on there. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of The Kingdom Says.